So in this video on Hatshepsut, we'll be having a look at some of the images of being a queen and a king during this time period. Pretty important for us to understand these key terms and to be able to use them to describe how Hatshepsut depicted herself. And we need to be able to track the way she depicts herself over time as well. So this allows us to do that, to be able to say, well, how was she depicting herself when she's fulfilling particular roles during her very long reign as a queen and as a king. So we'll start with Hatshepsut as a queen, and we'll have a look at the main image of queenship that we have, which is the vulture headdress. So this is what, or how a woman who was the king's great wife would be depicted during this time period, would be wearing the vulture headdress. Doesn't mean she wore it around the palace or whatever, but when she was depicted in reliefs and monuments, she would be depicted wearing this vulture headdress, which is symbolic of her power in that role. And we have an image of Hatshepsut here wearing that queenly, wearing that queenly headdress, the vulture's headdress, in her sarcophagus. So this is a sarcophagus she made for herself, or had made for her, when she was a queen. So this indicates that Hatshepsut was fulfilling that expectation of being a queen by sticking to what a queen would be expected to wear. We have another image of Hatshepsut here in this line drawing as well, depicted behind her husband, the king, Thutmose II, which is in that subordinate position, which is the expectation at the time. And we can see in this image also that Hatshepsut is wearing that vulture headdress. So the next one we're going to have a look at is aspects of kingly regalia. Kingly regalia is a good term to, or pharaonic regalia is a good term to describe the collective, I suppose, images or ways that kings depicted themselves officially during this time period. And we need to know what these are. And what they're symbolic of, but also the term pharaonic regalia is a good way to describe them collectively, because Hatshepsut, when she became the king, continued to use this pharaonic regalia to depict herself, because there was no other way she could do that, and it was expected that a king wear these certain things and be shown with this pharaonic regalia, so she continued that tradition, and there was really no other way to feminize the role of the king, because there was only one way to understand it. So firstly, we have the Nemes headdress, which we probably mostly associate with the king Tutankhamun, and it's not really a crown, it's more a headdress, but it's symbolic of pharaonic power, and it was made of linen. Typically we can see in this one with that blue and yellow colouring there. The next image we have is a crown. It's a blue war crown, and this is particularly important during the 18th dynasty, where the warrior pharaoh image came about, where the king was expected to be a great warrior who would lead his people into battle, and this is how the king would be depicted, wearing this kepresh, this blue war crown, when involved in military matters. So when we see that the king depicted wearing this, then that indicates it's to do with the military. We also have the white crown, which indicates that it's the king of Upper Egypt down to the south, where the Theban kings are from, and we have the red crown, which was the crown of Lower Egypt to the north. And when Egypt was united under one king during the kingdom periods, then the king would wear the double crown, which combined both of those crowns together. So we often see the king during this time period wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, including Hatshepsut. Some other images of pharaonic regalia are the uraeus, the false beard, and the shendit kilt. And this is obviously an image of Tutankhamun, because he's a very typical image of what we're describing here, with the uraeus on his forehead there, which is the rearing cobra, usually on the Nemes headdress, but also on the kepresh, which is the blue war crown. And that's symbolic of divine authority. The false beard, it was a false beard. They didn't grow a beard, but they wore a false beard, and that associated them with the god Amun, who had a beard. So it was a direct way for the king to really show that relationship with the king, the god Amun. And finally, the shendit kilt was also a part of the expected pharaonic regalia. It was just a linen kilt that the king was expected to wear. We also have I've mentioned this before, the warrior pharaoh image, and usually during this time period, the warrior pharaoh was wearing the kepresh, which is that blue war crown, and often, almost always, depicted riding a chariot, often with a composite bow, smiting and destroying the enemies. But not always, and we don't see Hatshepsut depicted in a chariot ever. We see her, though, depicted as a warrior pharaoh sphinx, which was just another way that a king could present themselves as a warrior pharaoh. One's not better than the other, it's just one way of depicting yourself as a warrior pharaoh sphinx. And we have images of Hatshepsut, such as this one here, as a warrior pharaoh sphinx, which were found at her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. So there's a few little images of kingship and queenship in the terms that we need to know. We do need to know all of those terms to be able to describe Hatshepsut in her pharaonic and queenly regalia.